I hated writing the script for this devlog. My brain just refused to cooperate today and it took me way too long to get this short update done. That aside, this week I've been doing mainly backend work, meaning that while all I have to show from the game itself is end. The progress I've made is more significant than that, because these clips weren't me playing, but a pre-made sequence of moves executed by a replay system that I made. A system which will be crucial for recreating fight scenes with any degree of accuracy, since I will need to recreate not only the moves themselves, but the timing of them as well. Though the fact that I don't record my work on this is an issue right now, because I don't really have much to show other than the finished interface for putting in the move sequences. Which admittedly is a really nice looking interface, and a practical one too. It automatically checks if the unit I want to execute the move or be targeted by one actually exists, it loads which moves the given unit have, and it lets me input custom parameters, which I can use for example to control the speed of a unit's movement and the height of the jump that happens during it. And a lot of its polish is thanks to Claude AI, which I've been using as a really effective coding assistant, but I'm going to guess that it's not the kind of bot that you're here to hear about. So let's talk about this bot, and the fact that she now has a walk cycle, which means that the pose system is in place and working well. Although, yeah, it's maybe not the best walk cycle for showcasing this feature, because if I didn't tell you that her pose changes, you could easily miss it. It will be more notable once we get some actual attacks, or someone moving in a more animated fashion. Although while the pose system is functional, it is by no means complete. Mixed poses are one thing I'll have to figure out. For instance here, V changes the way she's holding her hands as she continues walking, which will probably require having a system where one pose can partially override another, somewhat similar to how things are done in 3D RPGs, where for example the weapon you hold alters the walking animation. But this game is not a 3D RPG, so I will also have to figure out a system to make each character have multiple walk cycles they switch between depending on the situation, because I don't have the luxury of giving the player sprint and walk buttons. Besides, in the middle of a fight you probably won't be thinking about what walking animation your character should be using, so it should be automated. The alternative of course would be to have just a single walk cycle per character in the actual game, but that's not how I want to do things. When recreating the fights, I don't want to use this game as just an animation software, and it would be a very poor one anyway. And what I mean by that is that, sure, I use that sequence playback system that I talked about earlier, because I want specific timing on the moves, but the moves themselves should be fully achieved through the game mechanics, identical to how they would look like when you were actually playing. I want the player to be able to do the kinds of things that occur in the show's fight scenes, and I want the recreations of these fight scenes I make to only differ from real gameplay in the camera work and the fact that the AI opponents are doing exactly what I need them to. Directionality might also become a problem when it comes to poses, because take this moment for example. Here Uzi is holding onto V for a notable period of time, meaning that this would have to have its own pose. But how do you display that? We would want Uzi's sprite to extend into V's space, which is easy enough to do on a side view, but what if V is above Uzi from the camera's perspective? Or for instance, what if we're in the 3D view and the player wants to rotate the camera? Does that mean that I would have to implement a smart camera system that would force a sideways view in situations like this? I'm not sure if that's a good idea. I literally came up with it right as I am writing this script. And personally I found it frustrating when in Jedi Fallen Order the control over the camera was taken away from me because the developers apparently really wanted me to see something and didn't trust me enough to look around and notice things myself. But most of these issues can be solved at a later point. Right now I'm ready for the fun part, that is actually adding the specific attacks. And the early December as the date of the first fight recreation being complete, that I think I mentioned at some point, is looking achievable. Granted, it won't be the prettiest thing, as the sprites will likely still be in their current half-finished state and I probably won't have a proper environment built, but it will exist, hopefully. And that's all I've got, so until next time, farewell.